We were excavating the site of a royal burial ground, first discovered in 1939 by Mrs. Pretty and her excavator, Basil Brown. They were exploring the mounds that Mrs. Pretty could see from her dining room window. And this was a very exciting excavation. The discovery was of a ship, an enormous ship, 27 metres, 90 feet long, in a trench under Mound 1, the biggest mound. Inside this ship was a chamber, a wooden chamber which had collapsed, and in the wooden chamber there was a coffin that had collapsed as well, and a wealth of extraordinary finds. Absolutely beautiful, a very high level of craftsmanship, and covering what was then the role of a major leader. So a warrior, swords, spears, helmet, shield. He was a giver of feasts, so cauldrons and dishes to eat out of, silver finger bowls. And also a person who had some kind of status in the emerging kingdom of East Anglia, probably a king himself. And that was obvious from certain symbolic objects like a sceptre and a standard. These were very unusual finds. So at the time, and indeed ever since, it's thought to have been the burial of Radwald, a king of East Anglia, who died around 624, 625, that sort of time. He was well known in his day, and it was just the time that the Kingdom of East Anglia was forming, and a lot of pressure was coming from Europe to convert to Christianity, and this meant important decisions about who our allies should be. The excavation in 1939 was one of the great occasions of British archaeology, and basically they had to assemble hurriedly. 1939, the eve of the Second World War, everybody was getting ready for it. They spent 10 days excavating this burial chamber, and in that time 237 objects were revealed. Extraordinarily great achievement. They made some very good records, and they made some very good observations. So although it was a hurried event made on the eve of war, it was very skilled, and they were lucky enough to recruit some of the greatest excavators at the time. So at the end of the dig, the records were a lot of photographs and also a lot of drawings, particularly by Stuart Piggott, very skilled artist himself. And so the relationship of the finds in the ground, all that was brought out during this extraordinary 10 days. After that, there was the ship that all this stuff was found in. The ship itself had been found by Basil Brown and recognised by him because he found small bits of iron. In fact, one of the very first finds in the dig was one of these small bits of iron, which are iron rivets. These rivets held the planks of the ship together, and as they cleaned, they could see the rivets were in rows, long rows. The ship was 27 metres long, 90 foot that is, a very big vessel, and the rows of rivets showed where that ship was, and the little variations in the colour of the soil showed the type of ship it was. It was made of wooden planks, clinker built as they say, sort of overlapping planks. And those overlapping planks could be mapped because the dark edges could still be seen, and the rows of rivets showed how one plank was joined to the next. At that time we formed the idea that there should be something of the ship to be remembered, preferably a whole one-to-one, full-size reconstruction. In order to reconstruct the ship, we needed experts, we needed money, we needed volunteers, we needed some organisation to direct the work, and that group of people are the Sutton Ships Company. To try and be as authentic as possible, to try and see what it would have been like being an Anglo-Saxon shipbuilder in the 7th century. We made our own tools, researched what they should have looked like, and then made them. And then our volunteer workforce has gradually worked out how they could be used, how they would have been used. All this is new knowledge. It's not guesswork now because we've done it. And as I say, the ship has taught us how to do it. This means that we've got information that wasn't there before, that the whole building the ship is an adventure in which you have to listen as well as talk. You have to listen to what other people are saying, and you've got to listen to what the timber is telling you. All those things gradually compose themselves into a ship. Now, I should also say this, that our ship is not going to just be a utilitarian vessel. Remember that inside it, when it was buried, there were objects of fabulous beauty. Gold, garnet, silverware, very, very high quality craftsmanship. And so it stands to reason that the ship itself, the largest vessel known up until the late Viking period in the 11th century in England, that ship itself would have been a thing of beauty as well. So we're putting a lot of research into what kind of decoration there would have been along the gunwale and along the stem and stern posts. And so the object that's being made here it's not just simply a vessel to knock about and see if it floats. We'll do that, but we also want it to look beautiful.
The ship is being built to a drawing, a minimum reconstruction drawing, which was drawn in 2018 by Dr. Pat Tanner from Southampton University. And his work is done using digital design programs, and it takes in all the previous data from the excavations in 1939 and 1967 to 1970. With any ship of this type, the sequence of construction is to lay the keel first, and then to put the stem and the stern post on at each end. So here you see we have the keel under the base of the ship, and the stem at the bow, and the stern post at the stern. And in our case, because we couldn't find a tree long enough to do the keel in one piece, we have two intermediate pieces, bow and stern, which are called underlouts. Now, having built the backbone, we can then plank the ship, and we know the Saxons would have planked the bottom planking, the first 5 planks in our case, and then put the framing in the bottom of the ship to make it rigid. Following that, they'd have put the top sides planking on, so that's on the sides of the ship, and then they would put the remaining frames in and then proceed to fit the ship out. Having received the drawings from Southampton and a technical data table called a table of offsets, the first process was to draw the parts of the ship out full size. So we drew the frames of the ship and we drew both ends of the ship out full size in a process known as lofting. It's called lofting because the old boatyards always used to do that in the loft of the yard. It was the only flat space where there was free area. And that gave us then a full-size drawing of the ship from which we can take patterns to go and source timber and all the other things that we need to do. Where we can, we're trying to use the original type of tools that the Saxons would have used. So, for instance, some of those haven't changed very much. So this is a commercially produced forest axe. It's a lightweight axe, sharpened on both sides, double ground, and this is a general everyday sort of a tool, axe that would have been used in the Saxon period and which we can still use for converting timber today. And then, having got close to the size that we need, we have finally the T-axe. This is a bespoke tool. It's made for us by a blacksmith in the West Country called Alex Pole. And this is just single ground. So this is a right-hand tool because this side is flat, the other side is ground, and the handle is offset from the blade. which allows you to use it against the side of a piece of work without barking your knuckles all the time. And these are bespoke to us, but we know that these are used from the period because some are being found in excavations, and also you can see them, albeit a little bit later, on the Bayeux tapestry. To drill holes, the Anglo-Saxons had a number of tools. This is one of them. This is a breast auger. So it has a spoon bit in the bottom. Again, these are bespoke and made by Alex Pole Ironworks. And then we have made the wooden body. And it's a very accurate cutting tool. It's as good or even better in some respects than a modern drill or auger bit, because it works both ways. It'll cut clockwise and anti-clockwise. It follows very straight down the line that you want to drill through, and it's very controllable because you're working at your own speed. The operator is the limiting factor. Now, when we're putting pieces of timber together, holding them together, we have some traditional style clamps. These are wooden clamps with a movable bar, and once you put the two pieces of timber together, you just drive in the wedge between them, and that then holds the two pieces of work together. The way we began the process of building the ship was to build two models, one at full size of the middle part of the ship, and one at 1/5 scale of the whole of the ship. These were firstly proof of concept that the drawings actually worked, which they did. The drawings are very accurate, and also they were then both experimental and training tools for our volunteers. It's enabled us to look at various aspects of the ship and the build, and how the techniques we need to use change between what we understand in terms of modern boat building and this earlier way of building a ship. The timber of the ship is nearly all oak, and we're using English oak. Most of it has been donated by local farms and estates, and then the planking is held together with iron nails, which again are being made especially for the ship out in wrought iron, and other parts of the ship are held together with wooden nails, tree nails. Now these are made of willow, except where they're in the backbone of the ship, which are oak. They're made of willow, and they're secured with a timber wedge of a dissimilar material. So an oak tree nail is secured with a willow wedge, and a willow tree nail is secured with an oak wedge. Once we've built the ship, we then need to protect her, and we will try to use where we can traditional materials. So that will be pine tar, what we know today as Stockholm tar. It'll be linseed oil, and there may even be mixtures of coatings using things like animal fats and beeswax. But we may find that to prevent marine growth on the bottom of the ship, we do need to use modern anti-fouling paints. In modern boat building, where planking is planed through mechanical planers to get to the correct thickness and to get a smooth finish, we don't usually caulk or waterproof between the joints of a clinker-built boat. In this system, where the Saxons were using axes entirely, maybe draw knives, but usually axes to make the planking and to build the ship, they would have caulked between the planks with either a high quality woolen cloth or a spun skein of sheep's wool, and those would have been set in either pine tar or a mix of beeswax and animal fats. We are going to use strips of woolen cloth set in animal fat and beeswax to seal the ship, because we know that has been done in earlier ships of the period.
When all that's done, it'll be time to launch the ship, and the ship will launch hopefully in 2024. So that's the idea. That's going to put it in the water, and hopefully it'll float beautifully evenly. But there will always be adjustments to make. Ballast has to be calculated, that will be added. And then we have to make sure we've got all the fittings that we need there ready for our journeys. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about these journeys because it's when we shift our boat from being something built in Woodbridge to something that explores the places that the kings of East Anglia might have gone to, starting with the Kingdom of Wessex. So the Kingdom of Wessex takes you down the coast to the Thames, then we go up the Thames under Tower Bridge, and then up towards Oxford, and all the way up we note Anglo-Saxon settlement sites that have been excavated or been found, all the way up, so that our crew and also our visitors on this journey see something of the Anglo-Saxon landscape, or should I say riverscape, as we go. And therefore I think it's going to be much, much easier to share than, say, a ship just sailing on the sea, with just the crew there. And so every river we go to, we're going to announce that we're arriving, and we're going to have special places that we stop. And so it'll be like the circus coming to town. We'll be visiting various places and putting up temporary exhibitions and so forth. So we also hope that local rowers in each of these rivers will form part of the crew and help us to understand their river. So that's the visit to Wessex. Next one will be Mercia, and we'll go up to the Humber and then up the River Trent into Mercia. And just when you start entering the River Trent, there's a place where 3 notable battles took place between East Anglia, Mercia and Northumbria. And these battle sites are largely lost, but we know roughly where they are. So to go there in a ship would be a very exciting and interesting thing to do. It would help us to decide whether the Sutton Hoo Mound 1 ship was in fact a fighting ship, or whether it's just a ceremonial ship, or whether it could have carried some cargo. And we'll play this as a piece of, if you like, wide-scale theatre, where the ship will set out and go to the mouth of the Trent, go to the sites of the battle, and we'll just see, well, how useful would it have been? Then we're going to go up the Ouse to York and start to visit Northumbria. So from there we go up the coast again, the Tees, the Wear, the Tyne, and each of these are sites, or rivers rather, where the early monasteries happened in the 8th century. It's these journeys shared with everybody that we can share with, filmed by Time Team, are going to be themselves a sort of drama reenacting the early days of the kingdoms, the various kingdoms, the different kingdoms of England. In order to get the ship built, we had lots of discussions, but decided that the best place, if possible, was to build it near the burial ground. So over the River Deben, from Sutton Hoo, is the town of Woodbridge, and in the Woodbridge waterfront there has been a recent development. The Woodbridge Town Council and the Woodbridge Riverside Trust have been developing this waterfront, and among the facilities that they created was a large shed, sort of like a hangar really, called the Long Shed, long enough to put a 90-foot vessel in, and that's where we're building it. It's very easy to find. It's near the station in Woodbridge, and you're always welcome to visit it.